All right, so I've done one review. The first review was done with my phone propped up with my Xbox remote, so it was pretty professional. And I was wanting to talk about my CZ Tactical Sport Orange, or TSO, whatever you want to call it. It is probably my favorite or second favorite pistol that I own. It is quite a nice gun, especially for the money. So usually when you get into like really fine like handguns, you're talking about like when you get into like hand-fitted guns, something like an MPA DS9 or like Atlas Gunworks or Nighthawk Custom or Hayes Custom. It's just that they are producing such a limited number of products that they have to sell them at quite a significant markup to really make it a business strategy that's going to work and actually keep everyone fed and keep the lights on in that business. CZ operates on a much more mainstream level. They have some, sort of Glock competitors that you can pick up for a similar price that are probably better products that I personally have never handled a Glock. I've handled a few, but I've never really been interested in owning one. I've shot like, I think you can probably pick up like a Nerf gun with a trigger that's just as good as most Glocks on the market. So they're not something that interests me. But let's jump in and talk about the TSO. So we will talk about what I like about it. I do have some gripes that I'm going to get into and sort of discuss with you. From an aesthetic standpoint, I think they did a really good job at making the TSO feel quite special. From the 20-round magazines that come with it, having an orange aluminum base plate just sort of adds to the theater of the TSO. You've also got the aluminum checkered grips here. They're quite grippy, but not aggressive to the point where you're going to be uncomfortable. Now, that also gets me to my first gripe. Not a huge fan of orange. And then also the mag release here, the extended mag release. Now keep in mind, I only have about 600 to 800 rounds to this gun, honestly. So we're not talking a huge number of rounds, and we're also not talking like a higher power sort of stuff. We're talking about, usually I shoot like a CCI Blazer, which is just 115 grain, probably traveling at a little over 1100 feet per second. At the muzzle. So we're not talking about something that should start shaking everything loose on the pistol. And this is, it's genuinely after 600 to 800 rounds, it's, sort of wobbling around, wiggling around. It's no longer flush. And unfortunately, I don't have the little tool to tighten that down. It's not a huge deal. It's just something that I've noticed and sort of sticks out to me as a talking point. Now this is not how you would get it, and when you open up the box, if you went out and purchased a TSO, this optic mount doesn't come with it. This is from CZ Custom. They have two different optic mounts that are offered. This one just means that you get to keep the gas pedal or the thumb rest, so you get a little bit better leverage over the gun as far as if you're doing like high-speed shooting and you want to keep that muzzle down, that's going to be a good tool to do so. And then you can also adjust what angle it's at. So this one is in a pretty steep, aggressive angle at the moment. It does get just a hair steeper than that, honestly, if you want it to be that way. And then of course it goes down, or you can leave it off altogether if you just want the optic mounted on there. The ergonomics of this gun really stand out to me as something as a positive. I have medium-sized hands. They're not massive. They're not small. And your thumb ends up resting over that safety so well. And then you've also got this here. So you just have this phenomenal control over the pistol. I also like their magwell. I think it's an aluminum magwell. It's not plastic or anything like that. Not quite sure. It's aluminum, could be a stainless steel, not quite sure. not that important to me. But what I like about it is there's no play in it at all. Not that if there is a little bit of play in your magwell, whatever pistol it is, it's not really a huge deal. But I just like that it was fitted in a way that there isn't any sort of play in it. It was blended really, really well. I didn't go in there and do anything to it. That's how it came from the factory, which I know in the earlier generations, people brought that up as a complaint as far as it has a magwell, but you can catch on the lip here. But I really don't see that as a problem. I think it's something they're addressing in the later models, the models that you would be purchasing if you're purchasing around the same time that I am or after. Another thing they changed is that I believe in the earlier generations that this was a plastic or synthetic or something like that. I believe it's aluminum or stainless steel. I don't want a plastic trigger on a $1,700 gun. That is no bueno for me. So I do appreciate that they have addressed that issue. Now I will say something annoying. Getting this rear sight off is quite challenging. So I just remove this whenever I need to clean it because I'm just not equipped to take this off. It is really, really in there. You'd probably need some tools that I don't have. It's not a huge deal, but it's just an annoyance. Now, I will say with the way this optic is set up, you are going to have, if you're shooting at 7 yards, of course, I would imagine you're not shooting at 7 yards with a TSO or an optic, to be honest with you. But if you are shooting at that distance, the holdover with the way this is set up is quite high, just because if this was mounted straight to the slide itself, you're not going to have to hold over as high. So if you're shooting at 7 yards, you're going to have to hold over that target to actually be engaging it. Otherwise, you're going to be just a hair down and below it usually. I will say I really, really like having the optic mounted in a way that it's not sliding with the frame. I would say that's a huge advantage. It helps you keep track of that dot much better. And with the weight of the gun, the recoil isn't very much, and then with the leverage you can get on it, it's even less. So you should be able to keep track of that dot pretty easily. The reset on this, the trigger is quite nice. So this is the lightest trigger of any of the pistols that I own. It came in, it measured at, so the take up is like so, and then it breaks at 2.5 pounds. It is a very, very consistent 2.5 pounds. All pistols are gonna come a little different as far as that's concerned. So you might get one that is, also I'll show you the reset. So the reset is a little long compared to my MPA DS9. Still not bad, it's just not as good as that gun. Of course, this one's considerably cheaper. And this is actually the slide and frame, our hand fit, which is pretty nice, especially in that $1,700 range. Now, if you want a gun that can go out and has phenomenal ergonomics, really, really low recoil sensation, and I really don't think to me, there's nothing that really comes to mind as far as that $1,700 price range that you'd probably be paying for a TSO. They've actually replaced this gun now. You can still get them brand new, but they've replaced it with the TS2, I believe it is. And the TS2 is actually not hand fit until you go up into the higher model of the TS2. They have like 3 different models of TS2. The third and last one, which is around $2,000, I believe, MSRP. Not sure what you pay on the street. They're a little too new for me to have an idea of that. But they are the top of the range. TS2 is a hand fit pistol, which also brings me to a gripe that I had with this TSO. So when I got this, and the gun was perfectly sighted in, by the way, so they definitely knew about this problem before it left the factory, or what I would consider a problem. The slide would, it reminded me of shooting like a bolt action rifle. So you'd have it you'd fire around, the slide would go back and it wouldn't quite go into battery. It would literally stop about here usually, or sometimes a little bit less than that. So it stopped like in the takedown notch almost. So obviously the bullet isn't chambered at that point. So I would go to pull the trigger and nothing would happen. And I would end up having to like just tap it shut, and that's all that would require is a little bit of a tap. Isn't a huge deal, but for the first 200 rounds, that was an issue. It wasn't until about 300 rounds that I wasn't experiencing that on a relatively regular basis, which really throws you off and just gave me, just sort of irked me, honestly. You know, you're like, obviously the gun had been sighted in because the sights were dead on at 10 yards and 15 yards. So clearly someone picked it up and shot it before it left the factory, and I'm sure they experienced that problem before it was all the way sighted in, and they were just sort of like, we'll send it out anyway. So that bothers me. Now, I don't have a lot of hand-fitted guns, so maybe I'm just coming at it from an angle that is wrong. Maybe for hand-fitted guns, you're always going to run through that. I know with my other hand-fitted gun, it was the same way. It just had problems during the break-in period. And just did not operate reliably. So maybe that is just something you are going to run into with a hand-fitted gun. But to me, that bothers me a little bit. So I thought I'd bring it up, and you can make up your mind yourself, obviously. But I just wanted to talk about it. This is probably the most accurate gun that I own. It is a phenomenal tool. So if you are thinking about purchasing a TSO, I would say it definitely deserves some serious thought. I do not shoot competitively. I go to at my range, they have some competition style shooting. It's not like timed or anything like that. So it's not about speed. It's just about precision. You'll shoot at 7, 10, 15, 20, and 25 yards. It is, in the way this is configured, this is considered open because of the optic that's on it. So that's what I shoot it in. It's one shot at each of those distances. And that's all I do as far as like competitive shooting is concerned. For the most part, it's just a really good way for me to get out of the house and do something that I enjoy. It's a little bankrupting at the moment just due to the fact that ammo is crazy expensive. And I also tend to enjoy the slightly more expensive pistols as well. I would definitely purchase an Atlas Gunworks if I had that sort of money to spend on pistols, which I don't. But yeah, I guess to wrap it up, I'll just tell you a little about what actually came in the box. So you'll see that the box is just sort of massive. It came with some replacement springs from the factory, brand new. It comes with 3 magazines, all hold 20 rounds. It comes with the little speed loader that everyone seems to shit on and hate, but I enjoy. And it also comes with the classic sort of CZ cleaning equipment. Which is nice, honestly. I appreciate that. It also has these little cutouts. When you get it, it obviously won't come with an optic. So there's this little cutout here that you can just pull out yourself, which is really nice, so the optic fits in there just fine. I do appreciate that they're thinking of little stuff like that. There are other little random areas that you can take out of here. If you have something else that you're wanting to carry, or you're wanting to add sort of like, I think you can equip this in a way that it's like sort of weighted at the end. If you want even less muzzle rise, I would say you might want to invest in that if you're going with like this 40 Smith & Wesson. This one is chambered in 9mm. I'm just going to wrap up what I love about the gun. The ergonomics are phenomenal. The trigger is phenomenal. Very clean breaking point. Although I have noticed just a little bit of trigger creep that's recently come in. But I would say that we're not even truly through that break-in period. It's something that isn't massive, doesn't concern me, and I'm sure it'll be fine eventually. Or maybe I'll need to go in there and clean something. Maybe it's just gotten dirty, surprisingly rapid. I'm not quite sure. But a 2.5 pound trigger brake, you can like cheat and you can, do the trigger brake from the, from like right down here. And if you pull from down here, it's about 2 pounds. You're eliminating about half a pound there just because of the leverage. But if you're actually pulling from the point where your finger is going to be resting and you're pulling that trigger, and what feels natural to me, it's 2.5 pounds, and it is a very, very consistent 2.5 pound trigger pull. Very, very impressive from an ergonomic standpoint. And I'm honestly surprised that none of these, there's not a 2011 on the market that I can think of that has as far as the way my thumb naturally rests over that is absolutely phenomenal. It's better than any 2011 that I've had my hands on. And then also the thumb rest here. Now this isn't the one that would come with it, but the optic that I opted for had this built into it. It does come with a thumb rest, and I'm sure you can find pictures to represent that thumb rest. Either way, you're totally fine. It offers really, really good leverage as far as controlling that recoil. And I really, really enjoy the Magwell. It's blended well. It's not as bulky as a lot of them out there, but still offers that same crazy quick. If you're in a rush position as far as reloading and you do competition shooting, you're probably going to appreciate that. Phenomenal pistol. For $1,700, I don't think there's one on the market that I would take over it. But that's my opinion. I hope this helps you, and I appreciate you tuning in. Thanks so much.